Welcome out, ladies and gentlemen, Net Worth Nation. I am your guy, your consult, aka Ron G. I have a special guest with me here tonight, none other than, I think you may have met my wife before. I'm wondering if it's been that long since we did a video together. But tonight, I want to introduce you none other than the lovely and the incomparable Kimberly Graham. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Give Kimberly a round of applause. Believe it or not, guys, getting the two of us in one space and place at the same time, you would think after 20 some odd years of marriage that it would be really simple and easy to do that. But anybody that knows where I'm coming from knows that that's not really as easy as it seems and easy as it sounds. So without further ado, I know we have been away for a little while. All of you guys, big up out there for reaching out to us down here in South Florida. We have been blessed. Your prayers and your concerns really touch us here. We've done pretty well, thank God, with Ian. Without further ado, I do have a really interesting podcast for tonight. I really wanted to kind of really dive in a little bit with this next topic. And the reason why I have the lovely Kim Graham here is because she can kind of help me really give you guys a perspective really from the other side. We know behind every great man, as they say, and I don't believe it's cliche, is a great woman. As you can see, I'm being threatened at camera point to say the right things. But at the end of the day, no, it's really serious about that. And so today's show, without further ado, we're going to kind of get into some of the things that we feel are a big obstruction to our net worth. And one of the things we wanted to talk about was the insulation of finances. And I'm going to really be short with that. But the insulation of finances are probably some of the more critical things that we need to look at when we think about how to grow our wealth and stabilize it, right? Kim and I had a running the thing we used to say, it wasn't about how much you made, it was how much and for how long did you make it, right? And so we knew that people that made certain amounts of money over a period of time had a tendency to have a much more stable and stronger foundation. And they were also able to go into other areas to build wealth because they knew they can count on the fact that they had that 40 hours coming in. So obviously the world is changing as we speak, as we know it. So when I look at the financial insulation, I think Kim and I really want to speak to today that it's great to have a W-2 and a 40-hour work week. But I think what COVID made us well aware of is that there's no guarantee that can happen, that 40 hours is going to stay there. I think we knew that even before COVID because we've gone through some things. I think Kim and I could speak to some of the things that when we first met, we kind of had an insulation mindset from the very beginning. Kim, what were some of the things that we were doing way back when? And I'm not telling her age, but way back when we first kind of got together. Do you recall some of the things that you were doing as far as how you made your income? And I think, the layers that you.
I mean, we started out in the, 40-hour work week, but we ended up, instead of having a big wedding, we bought a house. We were looking at owning our own businesses. And then, of course, once Cheyenne came along, I decided not to go back to work and kind of dive into building my self-employment income so that I would not have to go back to work and I could stay home with my child and kind of just be able to support myself while I did that. And I think that was kind of the start of kind of us thinking like outside the box, outside of the 40-hour, outside of working for someone else. So
Exactly. And to her point, Kim actually got into some of the things that she had a natural talent for. She was very good with children, and she actually used something that she was very good with and turned it into a profit. And these were before, Think and Go Rich books were in our lives. These were just things that her and I just kind of did right off the top, right off the cuff. And then she had obviously a very natural skill set with hair. So Kim decided, you know what, I'm gonna get my license, you know. So she had an income stream coming in from hair, then she had income stream coming in from childcare. And then of course, I had back then I was doing like financial renovations. That was one of my groups. We used to do like credit repair and things like that. Go financial renovators. And we would do a lot of stuff like that. I had other jobs where I would do things like side jobs, like do moving jobs and things like that. We did moving, we did hauling, things like that. And I was also into kind of like the entertainment space. Big shout outs to Friendly Faces Entertainment. We would do some really cool things. Big shout out to TT, Tanisha Tony, Friendly Faces, Ray Randolph. And so we would do some things like that. And we had some things going on there. And then even I call her my work sister, big up to LaShawn. And she kind of got me into the hair space, like Kim's space to a certain degree, but I was more in the distribution end, right? So we really came out firing in the beginning. And like Kim said, we got creative. We said, well, we have this amount of money and we can put it over here in a big juicy wedding and then be knocking on people's door for sugar, milk, and a place to stay. Or we could take those funds and buy our own home. And I'm so happy we did it that way. So, and I mean that sincerely. So Kim is absolutely right. We kind of like knew then, we just didn't have all the pieces lined up. We didn't really have all the knowledge there, but we had a good feeling that this is kind of like the way to go, like a precursor to that. So, which brings me kind of to my next point about the insulation of your goals and your dreams. When Kimberly wanted to take those shots and those risks, because let's face it, we were doing pretty good for ourselves in the telecom space. Not bragging, but I think we were close, definitely easily making over six figures during that time period. And I think six figures is probably more valuable then than it is now. I think now it's highly overrated, thanks to inflation. But anyway, so we were really doing pretty good back then. And then I think for us to really have to look at each other in the mirror one day and come up with this soul searching about taking some shots, even though we were very talented, it was still a high level of risk. And so that's why it's very important to insulate and guard your goals and your dreams. You have to be around the right type of people to allow that to happen, because she could have easily said, that's too risky. We have a little child and dogs and things like that. We can't take these risks from. And I probably would have listened to the words of my wife and not done it. And I can say the same for her as well, right? I think she wanted to take some chances. You know, I could have said, well, you know, childcare is risky. What if nobody wants you, you know, to babysit their child? Or what if the hair industry dries up and no one wants you to do their hair? And what are we going to do? So it goes both ways, right? It's not just a one-way thing. So I think the second power play that I really want to leave you with tonight is guard your goals and dreams wise. Isn't that right, Kim? Really choose who's in your place of space, because that has a very large impact on whether you'll see some of these things true. Would you say so?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we were able to give each other the space that we needed to explore and kind of go down different paths.
Sure.
And even though it wasn't always easy, and there were times when money was tight, I think in the end, it helped us develop kind of this attitude towards money and finances and where it comes from that ended up being beneficial as we move forward. So yeah, you got to be able to give a person the space to explore those paths.
Yeah. And listen, guys, earn the respect, right, of your woman, of your spouse. Let's be realistic. Now, don't just go out there and throw all these little things on the wall and hope for they stick. These women are very analytical, beautiful as they are. They're very analytical. So please come correct. Explain it. Show how it works. Show how it could look. You know, give them the benefit of being able to see that. And I'm sure most cases when they see how you've done your homework and research, for the most part, I know there's still people out there that might not allow that, but for the most part, I believe they'll come along, you know, alongside, right? So
Absolutely.
so that's that too. And which brings me to my third point for tonight. And this is something that we both can speak to, and that's becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable. You know, the real jewels in these things here, these goals, this network nation is really being comfortable with the uncomfortable. Because I'm gonna tell you something, it was very uncomfortable to walk away from a career that I had known for the last 12 years. That's all I had known, and I had been very successful. So it's not like I was bad at it, I wasn't making any money, and I hated the people, and I hated this, and I hated that. See, that's the catch 22. It wasn't that at all, you know? As a matter of fact, telecom industry was very great to me. Actually met my beautiful wife in the telecom industry. So nothing but positive things to say about this line of business. So make no mistake, I had to become comfortable with that uncomfortable feeling, you know? Was that similar to you, Ken?
Yeah.
That was a setup, if y'all don't know at home.
Yeah, I definitely was probably a little less ambitious in my goals, even though I was starting to go to school for hair and all that good stuff when we met. I had not quite adjusted to not having a 40-hour work week, right? Working for somebody else. So um when things changed and Cheyenne came along and I decided not to go back to work, that was the first time that I really didn't have um I didn't work for anybody else. And
Mm,
so that was an adjustment, and it's a scary adjustment. And I learned a lot during those times. And I learned to trust him during those times. And we're better for it now, but it definitely were some times where
true that.
it was tough. Say it was tough.
True that. So yeah, I know there's a big cliche out there. Get comfortable with the uncomfortable. But those are straight up facts, guys. I mean, anything that you do that really has a greater risk reward is a risk to it.
Mhm.
And when you put yourself out there, like Kimberly said, the trust, you know what I mean, and the prayers and stuff like that. And I'm telling you, you know, you want to talk about a true relationship with God when it really comes into effect. And I think we all know, you know, we almost are embarrassed because we call on his name so much, right? In these situations, we should be calling on him all the time, to be honest with you. I almost think he enjoys us when we're at this position because we really have the faith of a bird. Like God said, I feed the birds. How much more will I feed the animals, you know, or the of the earth? So it's like you have that faith, you know, that surpasses all understanding day by day. I can remember going out in that white van for like $25 in singles because I needed change and would just ride and ride and ride and ride out to these locations. And I'm gonna tell you something, you know, I would have my little music going on, my little tapes, but you know, I'd come home some days 400, 300, 1,500. It just depended, you know, what God would bless me for that day. And I'm gonna tell you, I appreciated it so much more. I can't even explain it. And I don't say W-2 is bad. But for some reason, when that check's there every Thursday, every Friday, every 2 weeks, it robs you sometimes of that dependency on God because it becomes an automatic. So for those of you out there at home, you know what I'm talking about. My W-2 people, love y'all to death.
Know your source.
You got to understand that you got to check in a little bit more. So us self-employed 1099 guys and gals, we kind of understand how that goes, right? So I did want to make a point to that when you recognize that uncomfortability, you know, that's where the gold is, right? That's where the jewels are. All right. And that's the third thing. And since we're on the topic of God, let's really talk about the fourth and final thing. And when you really want to talk about what it really looks like as far as what our lives should represent, if you say you believe in God and God can do all these things, then your life should exemplify that. What does that mean? That means that if someone says to you, well, why haven't you done your own thing? Why haven't you started your business? You're so talented. You're so gifted. Why? And if you say anything that has an inclination of fear or worry or concern, then you're not living your best life spiritually. You can't be, right? Because if you, I would rather you just say, well, that's something I'm just not interested in doing. That's a better answer. Or I just don't want to do it. And that's a better answer. But it should never be you're held back because of a fear or you're doubting or you don't know if it's going to work because I know God told me he got my back, but maybe he won't and things like that. If those are the kind of things running around up in here, then it's time for a reality check, right?
Mhm.
And what does God do? He uses us to prove that we can trust him. So people like us that are dependent on him more so are the ones that he utilizes to get his point across. That Kimberly said it best. I'm the provider, you are the recipient, period. You just happen to have this particular career in this or for this particular company or
He's
this particular
ultimately the
company.
one that gives you the favor that you need as you go to work every day, as you are trying to make sure you gain favor with your boss and your bosses and your boss's bosses, right? Like that all comes from God,
Absolutely.
right? He's the one that sets that up for you. So just that was something that I was sure to try to focus on is who my source was. And I think that helped throughout my years of working to kind of keep my eyes, not being a self-employed person. I was a W-2 person even recently. And I just that helped me kind of just stay focused and understand that this is great while it lasts, but ultimately my source is God.
I like the way she put that. Knowing it's great while it lasts, and her source is God. That's very important to be able to get to the next step. Because if you don't think that way, what happens when the W world doesn't work through, it causes a shortage of, of success. You begin to second guess and doubt yourself, and you get down on yourself and stuff like that. And so that what happens is that W2 holds a position on you and over you that it doesn't even have the authority to do. And it begins to get into your mindset where you begin to second guess everything. And so that's the danger of not putting the W2 in proportion to where it should be. And I think Kimberly has done a great job of that over the last few years. Here's the last thing I want to say before I leave. I know everyone always asks, what's your why? Right? That's the biggest thing. What's your why? What's your why? But in our circles, our why really has to be our attachment to our Almighty God because He is the why. See, if He's not the why, these other whys are uh very unstable. They're not stable whys, right? Because as soon as something comes against something that's not strong, a strong why, that why goes away. And so, I'll give you an example. If I say that I'm going to this job because I want to raise my children, well, what happens once your children are raised? Would you still stay there and work there?
Well, then that brings the question, can your why change?
Well, you need
Yeah.
to think about your why
Can you have
because
more than one why?
there you go.
Yeah.
Do you have more than one why? But what I'm saying to you, whatever your why is, it has to be a stable why.
Mhm.
Because and I'll give you a case in point. I had a career in the railroad. That railroad career was truly based on my need at that moment. I really needed something that I could raise my kids properly on and do certain things. And like I said, once that time period passed, I began second guessing why I was in this career. And there really wasn't anything else strong enough to keep me there. So here I am joining you guys in Net Worth Nation, doing these wonderful podcasts, and a whole lot happier right now, as you could probably tell. So, what's my point? I'm reaching out to you guys at home. I'm talking to you. This is understanding yourself. What is your why, right? So choose your whys carefully. But when your whys are spiritually based, they have a tendency to last a lifetime, your lifetime, is why you do it. And you've heard that before. You've heard people get up, take awards, for various things. Nobel Peace Prize people, they'll tell you, this was my journey. This was my lifelong dream, to
Mhm.
go to Africa and build houses or whatever. because there's a deeper meaning. It's not just based on a moment or a feeling or a time period. It's based on a lifetime experience.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Did you want to add anything?
There's probably a lot that I could, but then that would turn us into an hour or two. So no, I think we got a good start
Yeah.
to network me, the insulation kind of theme.
The installation guys, and we're going to come back with some more installation keys to this whole piece. And it's very important, closing out the year strong, guys, you know, really closing out the year strong and really setting the table for 2023 and of course, and beyond. So once again, I'm your host, Ron G, Net Worth Nation, joined by the beautiful, incomparable Kimberly Graham. Hopefully we'll see Kimberly some more. Maybe Kimberly will be doing her own podcast pretty soon. I'm sure there's so many beautiful young women out there that would love to hear more of what she has up there in that beautiful brain of hers. I'm your boy Ron G. Love you guys. Peace. We out of here.